Welcome to the WagerTalk Podcast for the week ending April 8th. Tonight, we are going to preview some of the biggest games in the NBA and Major League Baseball for the weekend, along with a best bet from myself and the boys. I'm your host, Marco D'Angelo, joined in studio by Dave Cokin and Ralph Michaels. And behind the controls, fresh off opening day in Houston, one of the biggest Houston Astro fans, Mark Seidel.
Yes, man. It was a really, really fun trip to go down there, man. It was great, great weather. You know, the rain held off until Tuesday night, you know, after the games. So it was fun to go down there and see the banner raising. Although they had a little mishap with the banner trying to get the thing off. It was everybody had a good laugh at it though. But that and on Tuesday I got to see the ring ceremony and man, it was an awesome time. It was fun to get back to Houston. I obviously grew up there and see some old friends and see the Astros win all three games. It was a really, really good time. Glad I got to go down there and see it.
They might be winning a lot more this year too.
Yeah,
the team's loaded.
That was one of the teams I took. I never usually take an over on that high of a season win total, but you guys are. When Garrett Cole's your fourth starter,
they actually. I mean, you stop and think about this. What rotations around baseball would Colin McHugh or Brad Peacock not be able to crack a rotation?
Yeah.
They're both in the Houston bullpen.
And speaking of Brad Peacock, I have a weird feeling by the end of the year he's going to be the Houston Astros closer. That
wouldn't shock me.
Nope.
He played well in the playoffs last year. I mean, he was a big part of it.
And I think the leash on Giles could be a bit shorter after the postseason problem.
He's a guy that comes in. He kind of reminds me of Gagne. Gagne had, he wasn't just your prototypical closer with two pitches. He was a starter turned closer. And he came in and
they got two guys like that.
Yeah.
Because Davinsky is just as ridiculous.
Just as good. Yeah.
You really you have four really high-end starters, and they don't have to go more than 6 innings.
Yep.
That's strong.
And you even look at Charlie Morton. And
5. I left Charlie Morton off.
And Charlie Morton, he was touching 97.
Yep.
So it's good to see.
I'm a big fan of Garrett Cole, obviously from Pittsburgh, and that was one. The season win total on him over under at an offshore sports book was 14 wins. We gave that out on a video because he has offense behind him.
Yep.
And as you just said, Dave, they're not going to have to force him to go, into the seventh inning. They got that bullpen to take care of things. He stays healthy. I think you're going to see a big year out of Garrett Cole.
And you talk about that bullpen. The bullpen is by far the lowest on the totem pole. You have a pitching staff and an offense that, if things go right, both of them could be historically good.
Listen, if they ever find a second baseman, watch out. Oh, wait a minute. No, I'm sorry.
I'll cut your mic off, too.
He's actually, if I had to pick a favorite player in baseball, it is Altuve.
Yeah, it's fun to see, a guy that was cut, from the Astros. They basically told him not to come back. Yeah. He came back, $15,000 signing bonus, I think is what they gave him, and now he just signed a contract that he's him and his family are set for life. It couldn't happen to a better person either.
Great story for baseball. We'll have more baseball in the second segment, but for the first segment, guys, we're going to talk some NBA. We're in the final days of the NBA regular season. All of the participants are pretty much lined up. It's just right now we're jockeying to see what position they're going to be in. We're going to look at some of the biggest games over the weekend, highlight one from each day. And we're going to start with a game on Friday night. We've got Cleveland and Philadelphia. This is a big one. They're playing for the winner of this one is going to take control of the number 3 seed. I'm going to start with you, Ralph, on this one. Let our listeners know, those that don't, this is a long-time Cleveland, I want to say fan, but I have to say for most sports, sufferer, because you got the Browns, the Indians. The Cavs have had the success the last few years. They finally got that championship. But you lived in Cleveland all your life before coming out here to Sin City. You follow the Cavs strongly. This run that they are, did they actually shift gears? Are we in playoff mode, or is this a false sense of security?
Well, they played so much of the season with so many people hurt. You've seen what they've done recently with Kevin Love back, and they've played the last 3 games without Calderon. They're playing Washington tonight on Thursday, so that's sort of a playoff game. I mean, how big is this Philly game where you can either play Boston without Kyrie Irving, who is now out for the entire playoffs, or have to play Toronto as the 1 seed. So it's a huge game. But, the 76ers are as impressive as any team. Since March 1st, they are at, a plus 11 plus minus points only behind Utah. And what I love about the 76ers is their defense. In their last 11 games, they have not allowed opponent to shoot 45% or better. Tyronn Lue is back tonight against Washington. I think the Cavs are playing their playoff mode. They've won 7 in a row at home. They've had an easy road schedule. The Sixers game is going to be exciting.
It is going to be fun. This Philadelphia team's got 12 in a row. And I think that they might be stressing this the importance of this more than the Cavaliers. Cavaliers are in playoff mode, but these aren't playoff games. The interesting thing is that the 3 is an advantageous spot now. I mean, there's a big difference, you would think. The perception would be that you'd be in a lot better shape being the 3 than the 4. Not that Toronto's unbeatable, because they're sure not. But you kind of want to face Boston at this point, despite the fact that Brad Stevens is an awesome basketball coach. The talent, the best talent's hurt. Hayward, before the season started, now Irving. I don't think they've had a single game this year where they fielded their full roster, which is absolutely amazing. I think Stevens is the coach of the year for getting them to play this well. But the reality is that I just don't see Boston being able to be a real threat come Eastern Conference playoffs. And I think the 3 team, even though they'll be at a disadvantage as far as the home court goes in the second round, probably is going to go in as the favorite over the Celtics.
Good points. And I hate to point this out, but Dave, you and me, we're the elder statesmen of this esteemed podcast.
Thanks for mentioning that.
When was the last time, how far back do you have to go where we've had a game in Philadelphia in basketball this late in the season for the 76ers that was of this magnitude?
I don't know. It's got to be, going back to Dr. J days? I don't know.
Yeah,
it's
maybe
been
the
a while.
Moses Malone day,
Yeah,
the 4-4-4 run with them in the playoffs. But it's been a long time. That
Sure
place, Philadelphia is going to be nuts on Friday night. Think about, the Philadelphia Eagles, the run that they had, and the way this team has played with the 76ers.
About Villanova, too.
Yeah,
pretty good right now in Philadelphia.
It's a good place to be in Philadelphia. I just think it's going to be off the charts.
They've even got the one guy that they can all hate, because Philadelphia fans have to have somebody to hate. And right now, it's Gabe Kapler.
The one thing to watch LeBron in this game, and I've seen it so much in Cleveland, when there's an up-and-coming team and LeBron plays them late in the year and has potential to play again in the season, this is a game LeBron will have 30, 10, and 10 in and will take over the game. I mean, I think when he really wants to win that game and he's showing a young team that you're going to be playing us in a couple weeks in the playoffs, he becomes a scary, scary player.
Well, let's go beyond LeBron for a moment. Obviously, he's the key to the team. But the second key, and I think he's very important, it's Kevin Love. They're clearly a much different team when Love is on the floor to be the running mate for LeBron as opposed to when he's not. And they've got to have him healthy.
But we all know the Cavs are a better team when LeBron has the ball. LeBron feels comfortable with the ball driving into the lane when Kevin Love's on the wing to shoot that three-pointer, and that's when Cleveland's at its best.
Last week, we talked with Aaron Bruschi on the show, and we'll hope to have him maybe next week when we start the playoffs, Dave. But we talked to him about the injury to Embiid last week, and he was adamant that he felt it wasn't going to be an issue with Philadelphia. He liked the backup a lot. This team, like you said, 12 straight wins.
Yep.
10 in a row against the spread, even more. They're still exceeding Vegas's expectations. Saw the early number. I think it was 3.5 for tomorrow night on this game. I like Philly. I don't know what you guys are going to. I'm going to take the shot with Philly. This is a statement game for both teams. As Ralph said, we know that LeBron wants to send a message to Philadelphia, but I just think that place is going to be nuts.
Yeah, I lean to the over, actually. I think you're going to see both teams racing up and down the court in this game. Going to be a playoff type of atmosphere, but that doesn't automatically mean unders because I think it's going to be a fun game where both teams are trying to get stuff done. But it's not a critical. I know this is going to go against what the standings say.
Right.
This isn't a critical game. I know that fans and media look upon the seeding, and we just talked about it, in fact, so I can put myself in that group. And, this is important. They just want to get the playoffs started at this point.
I think it's important for Philly. I think it's for a young team to beat Cleveland and not be in that situation. LeBron doesn't care what seed he is, where he plays. Going to Toronto's not an issue. We've been there, done that. So I think for Philly, it's very important. One stat just to counter your overplay. The Cavs are 1-11 over/under playing back-to-back days. They're playing Washington today, Philly tomorrow. LeBron really slows it down in that second game because he's been playing so many minutes.
When will the charts that you have at WagerTalk be available for this game? Because I want to check that.
Well, the NBA stat sheet is up daily by noon Pacific, but every day is a 2-day sheet. So for our listeners that go online to WagerTalk, you go to news and then NBA. You can download the sheet, and every day you're pulling down the sheet, it also has the following day's stats up and available.
Great stuff with the best bet that he's been doing very well on. Let's move on to Saturday. I'll start with you, Dave. We got a nice game on Saturday. Portland travels to San Antonio. Portland looks like they are locked into the number 3 seed. It's the Spurs, though. Right now, they're sitting there on the 4th seed. There's only one game.
They can still miss the playoffs.
There's only one game separates 4th from 8th, and then the 9th place team right now is one game behind the 8th place team, and the 10th place team is 2 games behind.
Right.
So this is a wide open,
wild,
wild west. How are you looking at this one?
Well, I don't know what the status of Lillard is. And, you know, it's such a big key for Portland. Also, I mean, I think Portland might be looking at the Houston game as a bigger game because they've lost all 3 meetings with Houston. And, you know, nobody likes to get swept by a team. So I think they could be looking more toward that game. But it's almost a situation where you have to wait and see what happened the prior night to determine what's going to happen the next night. Because, depending on what Portland does against Houston, the situation could be one where they kind of need to win the game or one where they can kind of just, you know, relax and have some fun. And to me, it's tough to make a move without knowing that stuff. And I also, at this time of year, we head down to the final week in the season. Same thing in the NHL. And I did this with a game earlier this week that I happen to use as a 5% play on WagerTalk. I think you have to wait for the daily information to come down and find out who's playing and who's not. Because the worst thing you can do is make a bet and then find out that your team's sitting 2 or 3 guys. And it does happen at this time of year. So patience is a virtue. If I know exactly what's going on in this game in terms of personnel, I probably take San Antonio, given the scheduling dynamics. But I need to wait and find out who's going to be on the court and what the situation is.
Ralph, clearly there's more pressure on the Spurs in this game because they're still, not only are they fighting for seeding, as we said, they could be fighting for their playoff lives. They return home. They had 2 tough games in L.A., back-to-back nights. They led the Clippers the entire ball game until the end, virtually the three-pointer at the buzzer. They lose that game, stay in L.A. at the Staples Center, play the Lakers the very next night, last night, and go to overtime. Now they're coming back home. I think the public's going to look and say last time they were at home, they absolutely derailed the Houston Rockets, the worst performance of the season from the Rockets. Do you think that's going to influence this line because of the must-need factor for San Antonio and the fact that they did destroy the Rockets in that last game?
Well, you know, Portland had been such a hot team. They reeled off 13 straight wins, 10 straight covers. A lot of people were on them. But in their last 8 games, they went 4-4 straight up, 4-3-1 against the spread. But now they're in a stretch of six of their 8 games on the road. You look at San Antonio, and it's pretty simple for me. With or without Kawhi Leonard, they play great at home. They're 31-8 straight up. They're one of 3 teams with over 30 wins at home. But how about this for a stat? San Antonio, the last 14 games, the home team has covered. San Antonio 7-0 straight up in ATS at home, 0-7 ATS on the road. Again, home-road dichotomy in this one for the Spurs.
Again, that's why you got to download that NBA stat sheet. Good stuff like that. Moving on to the final game that we got. Ralph, I'll stay with you. We've got the Lakers on Sunday. They're playing host to the Utah Jazz. The Jazz are one of those 5 teams that are jockeying for playoff position in the West. The Lakers are just 3-8 straight up the last 11 games, but 5 of those 8 losses have come by 6 points or less. This is a team that's a pesky team, and I like what Luke Walton's got this team doing. They're playing good, and all of a sudden they started to play a little bit better on defense with the cast that they have. That's something that I didn't think would happen.
How about Utah? All those that thought Donovan Mitchell would be leading this team, just raise your hand. I read a great stat that, Donovan Mitchell, a rookie from Louisville, got drafted by Denver as the 13th player and got traded before the season started for 2 players. There's only been 4 players in the history of the NBA that have led their team in scoring on a team that has 45 or more wins. So when you have a solid winning team, the 4 rookies that have led their team in scoring, Will Chamberlain, Kareem, Larry Bird, David Robinson.
Wow.
And add one more to the thing. But I love Utah's defense. Since March 1st, they're allowing 95 points per game. And what the Lakers did, the Lakers just upset Utah a couple games ago. They had to shoot 55% and 54% from a three-point land. They're not going to do that in back-to-back games to Utah in a matter of 4 games. So I think Utah's defense comes to fruition here. The Lakers, even in that game, they covered the game, but they still lost by 7 points, shooting those 55 and 54% numbers against Utah. I think Utah's defense rises to the occasion again.
Dave, one of the teams that is trying to get on the outside looking in is the Clippers, and they happen to be playing Utah tonight as we're taping on Thursday night. If Utah puts the Clippers away on Thursday night, that pretty much is going to eliminate the Clippers out of the race. So it'll eliminate one of those last 2 teams trying to sneak in, take a little pressure off of Utah. But if they need to win, if you look at who they have after this game, Utah's got Portland, the number 3 seed, and Golden State, the number 2 seed on deck. You would think that they need to stay focused for this game because of who they got left on the schedule.
Well, that makes sense. And, I can't disagree with anything you guys are talking about, so I'll just chime in and say I agree. But, Utah, we're talking about this in the radio show today. Utah is the team nobody wants to face in the playoffs because Gobert is a monster. They're a physical, nasty basketball team, and they're the type of team that even if you don't, if you're able to put them away in a series, there might be some residue in the next series after that. Utah is a physical basketball team.
They are. You talked about them averaging 95 points. The last 16 games, they've held 13 of those 16 teams to under 100 points. You just don't do that in today's NBA. I mean, you think about that, this is like old school basketball, and you don't want to face it because you do have to ratchet up in the playoffs when you're facing a team you go a 7-game series, you go deep. You got a team that plays defense, man. They are a tough out, and they weren't an easy out last year, and they've done a great job this year. I like them, and I think that they stay focused for this one against the Lakers. All right, guys, that wraps up the first segment. We're going to take a quick break here. We're going to come back, and we're going to look at Major League Baseball. We got 3 big games coming up for the weekend that we're going to break down. And then, of course, later in the show, Best Bet segment. That's what you guys wait for. We'll have a best bet from each of us. We'll be back in a moment.
It's Manic Monday, and that means every pick at WagerTalk.com is just $9. Get a play in any sport valued at up to $30 for just $9 each and every Monday at WagerTalk.com.
Welcome back to WagerTalk Podcast. We are going to shift gears and head from the NBA, which is winding down, to Major League Baseball, guys, that is just underway. And we've got some good games this weekend. We're going to start with one, Dave, on Friday night. We got a quick series rematch with the Dodgers and the Giants. Yep. They were an opening weekend matchup in L.A., and that was a series that we saw 2 shutouts by the Giants against the Dodgers.
With the same guy hitting the home run, Joe Panik, he hit homer in both games. That's the only runs that was scored.
Don't press the panic button. You got Joe.
Got another one since then.
And the Dodgers, Dave, what's going on with this 2-5 start?
Nothing much. I mean, I think that teams that like the Dodgers, they're just going to, once the warm weather shows, they'll start wrapping the ball. There's too many good players in that lineup for them not to. Pitching's been pretty good for the most part. I think the one worry they've got is Kenley Jansen right now. You see him standing out there on the field rubbing his elbow and throwing 91 miles an hour. That's not good.
No.
Okay, that's and I know he said it's no big deal. I think it is. Maybe it is just a dead arm. They better hope it is, because it changes the entire configuration of that team if he's not the closer he's been. And don't forget, Morrow's not there anymore either. He's wearing the Cubs uniform this year. So what was a real strength for that team for much of the last season was the late inning work out of the bullpen. It might not be there, and we all know how important late inning bullpen is if you want to be successful in today's Major League Baseball. So there are some red flags there, and I know it's just the beginning of the season, but I think the Diamondbacks are a more confident team than the Dodgers are right now. The Diamondbacks are really believing in themselves, and I think I'm starting to believe in them too.
That was an impressive series.
Ooh, it sure was.
The concern with the Dodgers, 4 of their games so far, they've been shut out 3 times, and they scored 1 run in the other game. Now, we know that you got great pitching, but you're not going to win too many games 1-0. You got to put some runs on the board, no matter how good your pitching is. Looking at you, Ralph, as I said, we're talking about quick revenge with these 2 teams. It's also quick revenge with the 2 pitchers. Both of them faced each other in L.A. on the March 31st start. You had Derek Holland go for the Giants. He went 5 innings. He allowed 5 runs. Only 3 were earned. When you have a quick revenge situation like that, do you do anything different in your handicapping, or do you just handicap it like any other game, or do you try to look for an angle edge?
Well, I think the quality players have the edge, be it a quality pitcher facing the lineup a second time or a quality hitter facing that pitcher again. So it depends on the situation. But, I'm a Madea fan. You look, his 3rd year in the league, he had a 3.5 to 1 strikeout ratio his first year, 4+ his second year, and 10 to 1 his first game is a nice way to start the year. And as far as the Dodgers' slow starts, you got to remember they started at 11-12 last year, and they started 12-13 2 years ago. So as Dave said, the starts of the year don't concern the Dodgers at this point unless player personnel's involved. But you also have Holland, who after spending 8 years in Texas, 1 year in the White Sox, making a first National League home start at AT&T Stadium. So does he get revved up for that? Does his players get revved up for that? But, you look at L.A., they're number 29 in slugging at 281 to start the year, so that's not the way to go.
Derek Holland's the type of guy who can change that, though. Well, he just is. Derek Holland at this point is just kind of a fringe starter. He's had a ton of injuries over the years, and obviously he's had an impact. He just doesn't throw it like he used to. He's hanging on his savvy, but he's not much of a pitcher, and Kenta Maeda is. So this is a pretty big edge as far as the pitching goes here for the Dodgers. But the odds makers are aware of that as well, and you'll have to pay a price.
Yeah, I agree with you guys. I'll make it unanimous. I like Madea. 10 strikeouts in 5 innings of work. He was just sensational in his first start, and you would expect that to be even better in the second start. So I agree with you there, but you will be paying a price. Moving to Saturday, talking about one of the surprises of Major League Baseball so far, those Arizona Diamondbacks will be playing at St. Louis. St. Louis has been one of the most consistent franchises in baseball over the last decade, but they haven't made the playoffs the last 2 seasons. Could this be a make-or-break year for Mike Matheny? What do you guys think? They got last year they had some injuries. We'll give them credit. Wainwright wasn't healthy all year, but, still, you're in a division where the Cubs ran away with it, and then you had the up-and-coming Milwaukee Brewers who have been improving.
Well, I like this Cardinals team, and I think if they can play some defense, which at times has been, I don't know, the Cardinals' way has not exactly been the good defensive way the last couple of seasons, and that's been a big problem for them. But on paper, I think this team's loaded. And I'll get to this game in a moment because this is not one of the spots I like them in. Yeah. But they've now that the bullpen's going to be healthy, they're going to get Holland, who is should join the team in the next few days. They've got somebody who was dinged up at the beginning of the season, and I'm blanking out on who it is. Gregerson. He's going to be fine. And now you've got this kid, Jordan Hicks, who throws the ball about 9 million miles an hour. Have you seen him?
I haven't seen him yet.
Holy cow. He's throwing the ball 102. He's just insanely fast. This is going to be a strong bullpen. They've got the offense. They've got decent starting pitching, and I think that they've got to commit themselves to Jack Flaherty as being a part of this rotation. And Michaelis, who came back from Japan, looks like he's going to be a serviceable guy. I'm going to tell you, the one guy who worries me the most in the rotation is the one going here, Michael Wacha. He's a 2-pitch pitcher, guys. He has not developed a good quality third pitch. And unless you've got really good, dominating stuff with those first two pitches, if you don't have a third pitch, something to change speeds with, major league hitters are going to get to you. I think Wacha's kind of a low-end guy at this point. I actually think he'd be better off in the bullpen. And if it's me, and I'm not the one making the decisions, obviously, I'm not sending Jack Flaherty back to the minor leagues, which they did after his good start the other day. I like the idea of Flaherty, young pitcher, let him feel his way in that rotation and figure out something else to do with Wacha. Make him the spot starter, long relief guy, because to me, that's where he's better suited.
Dave, how about this number for Wacha? Obviously pitchers have much better ERAs when they have wins versus losses. Last year, Wacha had 15 starts where the Cardinals won and 15 starts when the Cardinals lost. In those wins, he had the number 9 ERA in all of baseball, 1.95 runs. And in his 15 starts, he was 7th worst, 6.87. So with those two pitches, when he's got it moving, he does well, they win, he pitches great. If not, like you said, he doesn't have that go-to pitch that he can turn to when he's doing poorly and often gets shelled. Well,
and the thing is, the longer he stays around as a starter, the more hitters are going to figure him out.
This is a guy that just a few years ago was supposed to be the heir apparent to Wainwright.
Because he had what looked like great stuff. The problem is he didn't develop the third. It just hasn't come around. And two-pitch guys, it's not like he doesn't throw his other stuff, but he's really only got two what I would call quality pitchers. And it's really tough for a starting pitcher unless those starting pitchers are something exceptional.
Now, they are playing tonight on Thursday as we're taping, and that happened to be the Cardinals' home opener tonight.
Wainwright back on the mound.
Wainwright on the mound, and then they have Friday off. Now, we talked about how good Arizona has been so far this season. From a situational standpoint, I don't like this spot for Arizona on Saturday because win or lose on Thursday night, they're going to sit around for a day. And they had that huge, huge series against the Dodgers. They came off such a high against sweeping the Dodgers, which I don't think anybody expected them to do that. And now to go the first road game, I think that they, will be charged up because it was their first road game of the season, and it's St. Louis's home opener. But then you have that day off. You might just lose a little bit of that momentum they had. Greinke had a good first start.
Looked fine.
In spring training, he had the groin problem. There was some talk they lost a little bit of velocity, but I didn't see any of that in his first start.
That's nonsense in spring. I'm judging velocity in spring training is absurd. It's even dicey in first starts out of the gate because it's cold and guys aren't completely, they're just not in midseason form yet. You have to be really careful when you see drops in velocity in the first start or two. And watch to see what happens in games. A quick example, it's going off on a tangent, but I was watching Ian Kennedy for the Royals last week in his first start. And Kennedy's velocity was not there early in the game. He's throwing 91. He got warm by the 5th and 6th inning. Now he's back to 93, 94. If you looked at the average fastball for the game, it's like, Jesus, he's like a mile or two off his norm. But he really wasn't, because once he got into the game and got warm, he was throwing about where he's supposed to throw. And I think Greinke kind of just getting loose in spring training. I wouldn't worry about him at all.
I know they didn't make a big deal about the groin injury. He pitched 5 2/3 in his first start. 9 strikeouts, no walks. But the one thing that does concern me about him in this game, the high on Saturday in St. Louis, 41 degrees, the low 26.
Yep.
It is going to be frigid.
Yep.
So we'll see how Arizona responds to being absolutely playing in snowball weather.
And if there's an advantage there, Wacha already pitched in cold weather that first game in New York. That series was not conducive to baseball weather at all.
And Wacha wasn't very good either.
No, he wasn't. All right, guys, let's go to Sunday. And here's another one where we got a quick rematch. You got the Oakland A's at the Angels. Start the hype, boy. The hype train is there. We got Ohtani on the mound, Dave. And you know what? He had all the fanfare, all the hype that was coming with him. He has lived up to every bit of it so far. You've got a win already as a pitcher. You've got a home run. What more can the guy do? How do you see this one shaking out on Sunday? He'll be facing Kendall Graveman.
I'm buying. He's legit. It's funny. We watched him in spring training. It's like, wow. this guy looks like he's overmatched. And then the season started.
Yeah, and unfortunately it started against my Indians when he started hitting. So, the first home run he had against Tomlin was a 2-run homer. It was a horrible pitch. But when Kluber's leading 2-0 in the 5th inning and you hit a 2-run homer off Kluber to tie the game, that's an entirely different story, the way he went down and hit that second home run in back-to-back days.
It wasn't an easy pitch.
No, I mean, that showed me he can hit. And you've got to remember, last year, he only DH'd 65 games, and he only made 2 starts because of a shoulder injury. So this guy basically sat off over half the year last year, started to get warmed up in spring training. And I agree. I mean, most people had him as the number 1 prospect coming in. It's not even hype anymore. He's a legitimate Major League Baseball player.
Flip side of it is Kendall Graveman has not looked good for the Oakland A's. He's just not missing any bats. The sinker ball isn't sinking, and he's a guy who's got to get a lot of ground balls to be successful because he's just not going to strike people out. Velocity's there for Graveman, but the location isn't. Now, that might just be an April thing. Maybe he'll figure it out. But right now, Graveman is not a guy I would be looking to back. And the Oakland A's, by the way, have looked really bad so far.
With Graveman, if he was a horse, this would be the one where we would look if there's going to be improvement. This would be the start. This is his 3rd start of the season already. Hard to think, we just started baseball last week, and here we are. Guys are going to be making their 3rd starts. One thing I'm going to throw out there to you, Dave, with Ohtani, and I have always been a big proponent. The pitcher is always going to have the advantage over the hitters the first time through the league. Do you think any of that advantage is slightly negated here, the fact that he's going to be making back-to-back starts against the same team, so they get to see him, much quicker than they would have normally? No,
not really. I think it's the case with guys who have, really deceptive deliveries or something unusual that you have. You're looking at the kid from San Diego, Joey Lucchesi. I mean, he's just this wacky delivery, and that's going to give hitters problems until they figure him out, and we'll see what happens after that. But Ohtani just looks like he's got really good stuff. He's able to command it, and he's really good. And, the flip side of it, again, on Kendall Graveman, is if you're backing him right now, your money's going in the grave, man.
We needed a rim shot on that one. You're going. Good.
And I know because I backed him.
The difference, too, with Ohtani is he's really giving the Angels, I think he's going to give them a home edge when he pitches.
Yeah.
I mean, the crowd is different. Yeah. The spectacle, I think they had 250-plus Japanese credentials his opening day. So it's going to bring a different vibe to the ball game when he pitches.
How big is it going to be when he goes against Seattle?
Oh, yeah.
Between the amazing Ichiro, who, by the way, the guy's, I don't know, 40, whatever he is. Did you see the catch he made?
The guy's
a
unbelievable.
Phenomenal athlete. Just absolutely
He doesn't
incredible.
look like he's lost the step. I mean, the guy's a perfect athlete. Do you think that with Ohtani that we could, if he continues the way he's done, I mean,
I don't know if they're going to be able to let him continue the way. They might need to start DHing him more because the game plan now is obviously the days he pitches, he doesn't DH. And the day before he pitches, he doesn't DH, or the day after. You get the feeling that they, especially if they're going to insist on leaving Pujols, who's almost an automatic out at this point in the 4th spot, they might need more offense down the line, and Ohtani might be the answer. When are they going to get it? I mean, enough.
Yeah.
Well, I love Albert Pujols. He's a great player. He's going to the Hall of Fame, but I mean, come on.
You look at Ohtani when he pitches, we're going to be paying a price for him because the hype. Yeah. You're going to have to do it. Do you think he can reach Fernando mania that we had when Fernando came up? Because you talk about a guy that was
that good. I mean, because Fernando was literally unhittable. You couldn't do anything with him. He was just ridiculous.
Plus, you had a nation of fans that were attached to the Dodgers. You don't have that same thing with Japan and Anaheim. You don't have the Mexican backing following Fernando that went to Dodger Stadium and surrounded that hype. So I think it's a little different because it doesn't encompass the entire community.
It's different times, too. I mean, back then there was no internet and there was no Facebook and Twitter and stuff like that. And I mean, baseball commanded all the attention in the summertime. There was nothing else to do. That's not the case anymore. I mean,
I loved Fernando.
So did I. I mean,
I was like,
who did? How couldn't you? The guy's looking at I don't know, some stars or something while he's throwing the pitch. I mean, it's just crazy.
And he could hit too, not like a time, but he could still hit.
No, he was a good athlete.
Good stuff, guys. All right, that wraps up segment 2. We're going to be back in a minute. We're going to do best bets.
Every Tuesday, WagerTalk.com offers a best bet selection from its hottest handicapper. It's a great way to introduce yourself to WagerTalk.com with a big best bet winner for just $2 on $2 Tuesday.
Welcome back to the WagerTalk Podcast. This is the segment you guys wait for each and every week. It is best bet time. And Dave, before we get your best bet, tell us, I know you are red hot right now at WagerTalk. You got any plans for the weekend? Packages up that you'll be thinking about?
Well, the problem is I don't know in advance what I'm going to do. The idea is to be, when you're in the pick selling business, you want to be able to promote stuff. But in the summer, it's unlike football where you can almost know what you're doing a week in advance sometimes. In baseball, you can't do that. You just can't do it. So whatever I have is going to show up at WagerTalk. And I will say this, if I put the 5% tag on it, you want to be on it because those have been just absolute magic going back, it's been, I don't know, since the first of the year. I mean, it's been a ridiculous percentage in these games. And another one in the NBA where I almost never play. I've only played like one NBA game in the last 2 weeks. It was a 5% play. That won the other day. So whatever strong, the best advice I can give you is get the All Access Pass, because there's one other thing that I'll mention is that my hockey, I've had a very good hockey season, but I never put up the hockey plays early because I want to know who the confirmed goalies are. This is not about selling picks as much as it is about getting the best information possible out there. And patience is a virtue as far as that goes. When you get the All Access Pass, even if I don't promote a game, for instance, I've got 2 hockey plays tonight. I didn't promote either one of them. So the only people who got those are the people who have the All Access Pass. They don't cost much. And you're going to get all the plays rather than just one big play. I think that's the way to go.
Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. In baseball, you're 100% correct. You can't play the next day's game without knowing what your bullpen did.
Yes,
yeah, absolutely. Stuff like that.
And as far as the best bet goes, Portland's getting, as we're taping this, Portland is getting its rear end handed to them in Houston. I think that could be the case again tomorrow. I think they're going to be catching San Antonio in the wrong place at the wrong time because San Antonio's at home. And the Spurs, just as Ralph was talking about before, totally different animal at home than on the road. And it's going to be a big game for the Spurs. You'll have to pay a little premium with the odds makers here because of the scheduling situation, but I think San Antonio is going to be the right side in this game.
Yeah, and as Ralph mentioned when we broke down that game earlier about Portland after that hot run that they had, and then that they were 4-4. Ironically, that 4-4, which they cooled down, the back-to-back losses came right after they lost to Houston. They had all of that momentum, that winning streak, and that was their statement game. And then they got the old punch in the gut dose of reality when Houston went into Portland and beat them.
Dave, San Antonio plays defense no matter who's playing, and Portland's last 8 games, they have not hit 30% or higher from three-point land. I mean, and in the NBA nowadays, if you can't hit 30% from three-point, you're not going to win any game.
So it's entirely possible that they have, I'm trying to think of an expression that's dumped their load. Okay, how about that?
Run out of gas?
Yeah.
They shot their load there.
I think it's possible. And that could make them, if they finish with a nice high seed, that could make them a value fade in the first round of the NBA playoffs. We'll wait and see.
Ralph, let's head to you for your best bet and tell us how you've been doing and looking forward to anything coming up. I know you love the NBA playoffs coming up, especially your Cavs.
It's been a slow week for me. It's baseball. I'm sort of new to the baseball industry the last couple of years. I'm learning from you guys, a lot of great learning. Back when I was at North Coast Sports and Phil Steele Publications, obviously at this point in time we were doing the magazine, so I was never able to handicap baseball. So I'm slow to start the baseball season. I let the pitchers get 1 or 2 starts under, and I'll start that. The NBA, again, the last week of the NBA season is really touch and go depending on who's clinched, who's been there, who's done that. So I'll be full-blown back next week with the NBA playoffs and baseball. As far as best bets concerned, we're seeing an unbelievable amount of scoring in the NBA. Scoring is up over 2.2 points per game over last year. and the totals have gone through the roof. And I think this situation on Friday with Toronto and Indiana, it's a great situation to look at the under. The Pacers as a 5 seed is probably one of the biggest surprises I've had this year, watching them, being in Cleveland's division and watching a lot of their games. And the way they've played defense is just remarkable. Toronto basically went through an 8-game ATS losing streak, but then beat Boston to snap that. And in that streak, they lost those games or failed to cover because of the offense and a solid defense. So I do like the Pacers and Toronto under the total Friday night. Best bet.
All right, good stuff, Ralph. For me, for my best bet, I'm going to go to Sunday, and I'm going to look at Dallas at Philadelphia on Sunday. And this is one of those, for me, it's a classic situation. You guys know I love to find those situations to back my handicapping along with stats and everything else. And here's what I'm looking at. You've got Philadelphia that's going to be coming off the biggest game we talked about in that city for probably 2 decades, okay? This is a monumental game Friday night against Philadelphia or against the Cavs. Win or lose, I think it's going to be a horrible spot for Philadelphia coming off this game. If they lose the game, it's going to be the situation what we just talked about with Portland after the Houston game. Portland was rolling on that winning streak, and then they had their statement game, try to prove themselves, and they lost to Houston. And then they weren't the same the next game. How many times, Dave, have we talked on the radio show you can lose a game twice?
17. I'm keeping count.
Give or take a couple, yeah.
No, that's an exact number.
Exact count.
Yeah.
And this is one of those spots where if they lose this game, I see them coming out being a little bit flat because they get that dose of reality. Now, on the flip side, if they win the game, they're going to be on such a high, and the fact is they still need that number 3 seed. So the odds maker is going to make you pay a higher tariff with Philadelphia. Hey, all they have to do is win the game on Sunday. They're going to be laying double digits to this Mavericks team. And even though the Mavericks team, and there was all the tanking talk and everything else, the team is still playing scrappy in some games. They got an opportunity here that they don't have to win this game. They can hang around an inflated number. I like Dallas on Sunday. I'm going to take a look at the
Marco, I cannot believe I did not hear fat and sassy.
Well, we don't know. It's here in the notes. It is. If they win the game, it is fat and sassy. They're fat and sassy. My God.
Every time you use that expression, I want a plate of ribs. Seriously, I mean, I'm not saying that to be funny. Every time you say that, that's the image that conjures up in my mind is a big plate of ribs in front of me. And we're getting done with this now, and it doesn't seem like a bad idea.
That doesn't seem like a bad idea. Well, I've been known to be fat and sassy myself several times. Thanks for reminding me on that, Ralph. Well, guys, hey, I want to thank everybody. Dave, Ralph, for coming in. Our man behind the controls, Mark Seidel, keeping us running the ship, moving along, and more. And don't forget our boy Johnny Detroit. Shout out to him because he gets this up to all of the media outlets, and you can subscribe to our podcast on iTunes. We're now also on iHeartRadio, so you can find us there, listen to the podcast, and lastly, want to thank you guys, our listeners, because we wouldn't be doing this if it wasn't for you guys. We appreciate you tuning in each and every week. We'll be back next week. We're going to try to see if we can get Aaron Brewski on the line for NBA playoff action. Playoffs will be starting next week. The regular season ends on Wednesday. We'll be in here on Thursday night looking ahead at the matchups for the weekend. So good luck this weekend, guys. We'll be back next week.
And I bid you good night. Good night. Good night.
I'll catch you on the flip side.